a little bit about your approach when you're just doing more traditional, you got a small scene, 2 characters, coverage, that kind of stuff. Like, what are you using?
It's subtle. I'm using the same tools as a director of photography for lighting, but I think the biggest difference for me, and it goes back to early films that I've done and everything, is building backgrounds. And that's what a lot of directors of photography and cinematographers aren't paying so much attention to right now.
What do you mean?
What's in the background? What are your backgrounds? What's in the background of your close-ups? How do you build life in the background of a close-up? Because the close-ups tend to be on more screen time than wide shots, unless you have a very different show. So I find like a lot of times director of photography are kind of building the master or the mini master shot, and they're putting all their time and look into that feeling. And then when they go to close-ups, they don't have out of focus lights or a surface with a skip light on it, or matching a color on one angle and matching a reverse angle. So if you've got a blue background on one and an orange background in another, editorially it's not very pleasing. And I'm seeing a lot more of that. And I realize, I used to be a big deal for me, specifically shooting anamorphic films, was kind of managing the psychology of depth of field, specifically at night. I would light my night exteriors, sometimes like a 5.6.8 ND, 2 stops down for the wide shots, so I could pull off ND for the close-ups, because I knew on a 135 anamorphic or whatever at a 2.8, the entire background would just be a blurred mass, and I wanted 2 more stops to have a little more intermediate focus or something. Again, building backgrounds, and that's something that, certainly talking with the other DPs on the show, I try to get them to think about it. And what I did is, it's like simple scenes. Like there's a scene with Aaron Paul. He's on this thing called RICO application, which he's basically agreeing to go commit a crime online when Lena White shows up at this place. And all the close-ups I put in like reflections of vertical tubes behind Aaron Paul's head. Okay, you see him in the wide shot or one of the wider shots, but when you go to the close-up, it's these kind of elements. And this was what Jonathan wanted. He's like, get futuristic elements in the frame when you can. And one of the biggest ones is obviously reflections in glass. You can get stuff in there without overdoing it. So I encourage John and Zoe and the other DPs, like, you don't have to do a lot. Just do something subtle. Put a graphic reflection in something, or, again, tube, or come up with something art department wise to put in the background that's got a futuristic shape that ties into that set or whatever. So that's important to me, and it's again, it's kind of managing backgrounds and close-ups.
Yeah, I like this idea of building the background. I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about that on the show. So I'm trying to like understand it as you're talking about it. So you're just thinking, I guess you're just paying more attention to what the backgrounds of your close-ups are. But
okay, say you're doing a beautiful street scene at night, right? And you've got in your wide shot, and it's kind of favoring looking down the boulevard, right, and looking down a beautiful street or nightscape in San Francisco, and you swing a lens. Now you're kind of a tighter wide shot, and it's nice out of focus lights. But then you go in for your coverage or your close-ups, however you're going to photograph those, and suddenly you line it up for the blocking, and you realize, oh shit, there's nothing in the background there. There's there's a building with an alleyway, and there's nothing to see there. So what I've often done, and many DPs might just swing the action a little bit to pick up a background here or there, but I would have already had like a xenon skipping that wall in the background, and maybe taken 3 or 4 babies or dados or smaller units with very subtle nightlight gels, whether they're streetlight colors or bus color or whatever, and have those ready so that when I swing to a longer lens on that angle, I'm built a background there. I've already got something that has shape by skip light on the surface. I've already got out of focus lights behind their head that kind of look like, the master shot. And, I think that's what I talk about, building backgrounds, and I guess there's two schools of thought. Is one is stay authentic and let it happen for what it is, and then the other one is take the liberty to be more interesting and also potentially more emotionally evocative. And I think I tend to favor that second one. Is I'd rather take the risk to be more evocative and make it interesting visually. And
well, something I'm noticing in your work on Westworld is that certainly that I wasn't when I look at your the still shots, as I'm sort of scrolling through your episode as we talk, I'm looking at your close-ups, and it's weird because now that you're talking about building this background, the idea of building your background, I'm noticing a lot of attention and action in that background. The other thing I'm noticing is you're not keying very heavily. Like your key lights are pretty dim. Like the faces are, in a way, the backgrounds are more eye-catching in some shots than the faces are.
Well, I think it's also we kept it rich, we kept it dark, and I think I have to love Jonathan Nolan for that. We did the premiere at the Chinese Men, so I had to do a DCP, so I had a theatrical pass, right, for a DCP for the screening. And he was like, "Oh, let's just make it darker for the screening because it's gonna be in a movie theater." And
I love that.
And then, the irony is I have to check it. I'm afraid the show went out slightly bright because I saw it on my television up here in Oregon, which was adjusted pretty well. It appeared a little bright, but the show is on the dark side for sure. And yeah, I think it's how do you light at night so that it doesn't seem lit? How do you make people? It's tough because in the show we also want people to look good, and we want to shape their faces in the close up and make them, and that's always been important for me, is getting in on the close ups and shaping faces a little bit. So you add a slight underlight to bring out a jawline or a little kick on the back of a cheek or something to bring out a facial structure. That the idea that light doesn't come from one light, it comes from many sources, especially in close-ups. So when I go to the close-ups, I like to shape it and make sure we're building some good backgrounds. And that's a lot of it too is a B camera consideration, because we shoot a lot of a second camera that tends to be very tight. So on this year we had Robert Campbell, B camera operator, and he knows I like background, and foreground. So he will build, he knows as soon as he gets a half interesting shot that I'm going to want it to be twice as interesting. So he'll build lights and reflections or things to rack focus to or whatever, kind of, because the show does have a classic syntax. It's, it's not a show like The Outsider or, something extreme like that with a different visual syntax. This is much more classic, but we're trying to keep it interesting at the same time.